Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Geek-Stew. And today, welcome back to Control Over C, the Speedcast. That's right. We finish in under 30 minutes. It's very dissimilar to my love life, but anyways, I am your co-host, Ike Isaacs, and I am joined, of course, by the one, the only, the crass, the smelly, the overall lacking in personal hygiene, Salsa. What's going on, man?
I am. I'm here. That's all that matters.
You're like, I'm here. I'm kind of breathing. Let's do it. But
I
yeah,
mean, by
folks.
all accounts, I am clocking my hours.
You're like, there is an expiration, and it is going to happen sooner than later.
Oh man, I am tired, and more like it. So yeah, let's get this ball rolling.
That's right. Well, as always, guys, a small recap from last time. We talked about the Mafia trilogy a lot, and we kind of shot the shit. So there's your recap. Uh, we talked about the Mafia remakes, what was good, what was bad. We were kind of discussed that, and I mean, honestly, it's pretty much the gist of what we talked about last time. I don't think that there was really much else. Um, so yeah, so let's jump right into new stuff. Something that I learned the other day, and on Salsa, I think you'll like this because I filmed a video for Friday for the channel, and I using some very roundabout methods, I was able to get some gameplay from a Game Boy game from a while ago. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this, but so you remember or not Dawn of the Dead, House of the Dead, right? So also,
Yes, I am very familiar with the rocky history of House of the Dead.
so Salsa and I, we both love House of the Dead. All right, the arcade cabinets were something that we played like ritually. Like, I mean, anytime that we went on vacation, it was typically one of the places that we went on vacation. Our families, we would go together, and one of that place had an arcade. I think we've talked about it before, but it's a place called Indiana Beach in Monticello, Indiana. So if you've ever been up that way, I mean, I would recommend it. But they used to have a whole bunch of arcade machines, and one of them was House of the Dead too. And I mean, me and Salsa played this every year that we went, and I mean every year without fail.
No, I considered it a tradition that every year we would, well, I wouldn't say sit down because they never had chairs, but
Right?
we would go and we would play through the entire game at least once.
Yeah. Sometimes more because that game is just stupid fun. I don't care who
A
you
classic.
are. It really is. And I mean, and if you really think about it, like, because the House of the Two game, it was honestly really ahead of its time because you could choose different paths depending on certain things that you did, and the different paths would yield different rewards and enemies. And honestly, it was so much fun. It was probably one of my favorite arcade games of all time. If I had to do a top five, that would probably be in my top two, probably
It
outside
was
of that.
definitely up there with like what I would call the cream of the crop. You know,
Right.
House of the Dead 2, Time Crisis 3. There's at least one racing game up there somewhere, just not sure
Like
which one.
Crazy Taxi.
There it is. That's definitely up there.
Crazy Taxi. I
I
love that
actually
voice.
have that on Steam now, funny enough.
Yeah, I was say actually they have the Crazy Taxi game for free on iOS. It's just like a basically it's just a port. And it's not too bad actually. I mean it's pretty fun. I play it occasionally, which I'll probably re-download that after this and play it somewhere. But yeah, I mean but anyways, back to House of the Dead. First, if you've never played House of the Dead, long story short, House of the Dead is a rail shooter. It's a light gun rail shooter. I mean, that's basically like the technical name for it. But you go through a story. You hear a lot of really bad voice acting. You shoot zombies and you fight these monstrous like body horror. Like, I mean, we're talking fucking nightmares.
I want to say, speaking of the bad voice acting, the worst voice actors are the two main characters.
Oh my
Like there
god.
is there's one part where you can save this girl from getting eaten, but if you're too slow and she dies, instead of like telling her to, get to safety, your guy just goes, "Let's hurry." Like, let's ignore the fact that I just watched a woman die.
Let's hurry. No crying. I mean, and
Mhm.
that's one of the crazy things too, is that like, and honestly, the House of the Dead games, they got really shit on with the movie makes that they had, and I think we've talked about it before, but the House of the Dead, the first House of the Dead movie from like the '90s or the early 2000s, was basically just a stupid zombie movie that somebody made, and then they put clips of the House of the Dead 2 game in it, where like you're shooting zombies and shit. And it's and they slapped the name House of the Dead on, and they're like, let's fucking do it, guys.
They really tried that shit and thought we wouldn't notice.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the movie wasn't. I mean, the movie wasn't great, but it's by no means a bad zombie movie. It's just the fact that they tried to pull that shit that makes me hate it.
I'm gonna have you replaced as my co-host now, just for saying that shit.
Look, zombie movies aren't. I mean, let's be real. Zombie movies, a majority of zombie movies, with the small exception of a handful of zombie movies, they all fall into the same category as a B-rated zombie film, and most of them are campy, and it's supposed to be like that. All right, that's just how it is. But there does come a point where, like, especially if you're working with a like an IP or an intellectual property like House of the Dead, that you do need to kind of stick to the script a little bit. And that's something that they didn't do with the movies, is that in no way, shape, or form did they stick to any kind of roots. You know what I mean? They really just did whatever the fuck they wanted.
I I think the big problem there is less to do with zombie movies and more video game adaptations, where all they have to do is take the game, literally, they could just script the word for word from the game and then do that in real life. Not that hard. I am sorry. My mind's a little fried, so I sound like an absolute moron talking about it right now. I'm just trying to repress my rage. Like the Assassin's Creed movie. How hard would it have been to just hire some dude, put him in a white hood, call him Altair ibn al-Ahad, and then have him kill some Templars? Easy peasy. Good movie. It's all already written out for you.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It's like with the House of the Dead games. I mean, not to say that there's like a good story, but I would say that the House of the Dead games have a pretty reasonably solid story. I mean, there's not a whole lot of plot holes. It's super simplistic, but it gets the job done. All right.
There's at least enough there that they could go in and just patch up, beef it up a little, instead of completely ignoring that plot line for some dumb, campy zombie, not even a B rated flick. We're talking like a D rated flick of kids on an island drinking and then getting killed by zombies.
And I agree. I agree. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, I don't think it's a good movie just altogether, but I do have an appreciation for any zombie movie because, it's just how it is. But anyways, so you
Oh, you're a
obviously.
necrophiliac.
Oh, shut the fuck up. No.
That's a
Anyways,
real awkward silence.
I'm sorry, I had to respond to somebody. I do have to work for a living typically. But anyways, the what I'm getting to is that, literally, House of the Dead, in my opinion, is one of the hands down best zombie games of all time. I remember we had the port to the Wii, right, where you could play
Mm.
House of the Dead 2 and 3. And that was super
I,
cool. Or go ahead.
I thought it was 1, 2, and 3.
No,
Or
so it's
maybe
just
did we
two.
just have one on a separate disc?
We actually never owned the first one. It was only 2 and 3, and here's how I know it. The Wii only has a port for 2 and 3, and actually I purchased it not too long ago, about a year ago, because my wife has a Wii U, and I purchased it to play it, and it's very very nostalgic. But yeah, so I don't think there was ever a port to the Wii for House of the Dead 1. There may have been a port for like Sega Dreamcast maybe, but we not for the Wii specifically.
Man, I will tell you, not too long ago, I realized I have a Wii sitting here, completely just, you know, building up dust in a box. And I thought, what games do I want on the Wii that I can no longer get on like the Nintendo Switch? And I thought, I want Resident Evil. What are they? The light rail shooters. So it's
Yeah,
like
like
the Dark
Umbrella
Side
Chronicles.
Chronicles and the Umbrella Chronicles. And then I thought House of the Dead 2 and 3. I didn't care for 3. I thought it was bullshit. But I would go out of my way just for House of the Dead 2 because of how iconic and nostalgic that is.
Same. I mean, House of the Dead 2, I mean, it honestly, it was like the pinnacle of like it was just the pinnacle of all things zombie, in my opinion, because it just, I mean, it was just so good. I just can't express how good the House of the Dead 2 is. Like, if you ever think about like what's a good zombie game, House of the Dead 2 is a perfect example of a almost perfect, almost perfect arcade cabinet, but also a perfect zombie game. I mean, it's super entertaining. Like, I cannot express how much fun I have playing that game. Um, but kind of the purpose of what we're talking about, actually, speaking of House of Dead, do you know that there's a House like Dead 4 and there's like a fifth one? It's like called Scarlet Dawn, I think.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at the Wikipedia and I noticed there's 1, 2, 3, 4 Scarlet Dawn, but I'm noticing there's also the spin-off that I'm familiar with, Overkill.
Yeah, that was on the PlayStation, if I remember correctly.
Well, you can get it on the Wii.
Yeah, well, you can get on the Wii, but if I remember correctly, like I watched somebody play it on the PlayStation, like on YouTube, so that's why I said PlayStation. But yeah, I say Overkill. I believe that's a prequel, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, to the original game. Non-canonical. Apparently that has been made clear.
There's like, listen,
That's where they draw the line.
don't come at me with that non-canonical bullshit.
Oh
But
man.
anyways, so kind of to approach some of the more obscure titles, you've heard of Typing of the Dead because that's like House of the Dead. I think House of the Dead 2 and 3 had a version, but it was like you type to kill the zombies.
I have seen that. I always wanted to play it, but I never knew where to find it.
Well, so first of all, this is super 90s, but they used to have the House of the Dead arcade cabinets with like keyboards attached to them. And they look like those really old, like clickety clackety keyboards, kind of like the one that I have. But we're talking about like the really old ones that were like, I don't want, like, they were just plastic, it seemed like, where it was like,
It's like, oh yeah, that's the shit.
exactly. So it was exactly like that. It was like super loud, super click clackety. And, but yeah, so they used to have arcade cabinets that were standing cabinets where you would play Typing of the Dead, which is just incredible to me. Absolute fucking incredible 90s moment. Honestly, it may not even be the 90s. It may be like early 2000s, but regardless, super, super cheesy in my opinion, but also super amazing at the same time. But they also had a lesser known title called Pinball of the Dead. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah, I had not until I was looking at the Wikipedia.
Right. So Pinball of the Dead, and you can find this on for legal reasons. This is a joke, but you can find ROMs of it online, and the ROMs are really cool. They do a really good job of creating I would say a good depiction of it. But yeah, it's pretty great if you ask me. Honestly, it's pretty incredible.
You
And
know,
the Pinball of the Dead, basically, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a pinball game that is just amazing.
it really was a sign of the times how many games were getting pinball remakes. Like Ruby and Sapphire Pokemon got their
Yep.
own pinball remake. I loved it. I owned that shit, and I must have logged at least 100+ hours as a kid.
I remember
But
because we would both play because you would, back then, we would share games and stuff when we were younger. So I remember I got to play it a couple times too, and I recently, for legal purposes, this is again a joke. I recently found a ROM for it where I could I could play it, and yeah, it was great. I mean, super nostalgic.
you know, I think it would behoove us to mention emulators because it needs to be said, my official stance on video game emulation. It's necessary.
It
Video
is.
game emulation is an integral part to us, how do you say, maintaining the history of certain games. Because right now, you cannot go out and buy a new copy of Pinball of the Dead. If you want a copy of it, you have to get it secondhand. And if you're lucky, it's going to be in good condition. But no matter what, there's going to be a day when that game will not work anymore. There will be no more working copies of it anywhere. And the only way we can preserve that history is emulation. Like,
That's what I was going to say because we've talked about this too outside of the podcast. Because I have a PlayStation 2 and I own like a bunch of PlayStation 2 games from my childhood. And I mean, I love it. Like, I love being able to plug in my PlayStation 2 and just play it and have fun. But I also know that there will come a day where my PlayStation 2 won't work anymore. I mean, all material things have an expiration date, and PlayStation 2s, no matter how invincible they seem, it will eventually come to a day where you can't use it anymore. And like you said, eventually video games they degrade, they get scratched up, and eventually they stop working. So I agree. I think that emulation is necessary. It's going to be part of the future, and I think that you know, the sooner that these game companies get on board, because I know Nintendo is a fucking bitch when it comes to emulation. Because if you try and emulate their games, like I know that they demonetize people on YouTube for it. They copyright strike them for using emulations, and even though it's fair use, but if they say that they're using emulations or if they imply they're using emulations, it's honestly really disheartening because, like you said, it's necessary. There's no way around it because eventually the materials that we have just will stop being good. And so unless they're going to start replacing it for us,
the problem there is they see a profit margin. They can, if they see enough interest, remake or remaster the game and make bank. Resident Evil, they did a good job. They remade the games into a mostly faithful recreation that is worth the money. Maybe not Resident Evil 3, but
right?
we've talked about that. But then you have companies like Nintendo who had the audacity, for one, the whole Mario thing, where they put those 3 Mario games and then made it a $60 thing. But
Yeah,
literally all they are is not even remasters. They literally just upscaled it slightly.
right. Well, I think that like Mario Galaxy wasn't even a remaster. I think it was just a normal game, but they
Oh
had
yeah,
to
most likely.
because if I remember correctly, because like for instance, Mario 64 is just a port of a previous remaster. Um, the Mario Sunshine was an actual remaster, if I remember correctly. No, 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 it wasn't. It was just a port from another original remaster. And the Mario Galaxy was already a game that was created for the Wii or the Wii U, so they just ported it over. So I don't think any of the games on the Super Mario All Stars were remakes. They were just ports from previous remakes or just previous games.
My point. But more so, recently they had the incident where instead of showing Breath of the Wild 2 footage at some conference, they announced they were going to be remastering the worst Zelda game, Skyward Sword, and then selling it for $60 fucking dollars. A game that was apparently only $35, $40 when it came out is now $60. And it goes to show these companies and corporations don't care for you. They just want to get as much money as they can out of you. And the
Right.
best way to exemplify that is they use emulation software themselves. Like those little miniatures or the miniature PlayStation 1s that have like 1,000 games on them that they sell
Right.
licensed. Those are literally just emulators. It's not
Exactly.
even a joke. They do that because who's going to
It's
call them
okay
out?
when they do it, but if the fans are trying to do it in an attempt to, like you said, I mean, we eventually these games are going to they're going to stop being usable. So these companies are trying to get out in front of it by creating these emulation software type deals, but it just doesn't work. I mean, like you said, it's okay if they do it, but if we do it, oh fuck us, we're gonna
Like
demonetize your YouTube channel and we're gonna file DMCA claims on shit that doesn't even make sense.
like right now, if you have a PlayStation 2 sitting on your shelf and a shitload of games, it should be fully within your legal rights. And it should be encouraged even to download the software onto your computer and to download the ROMs right off the discs and just run an emulation and not be demonized for it. Because one day that PlayStation, it's not going to work anymore. One day those
Yep.
discs will not be read anymore. We're going to lose so much media to the sands of time. Like right now, did you know? I can't remember what game it is, but it might be a Metal Gear Solid game that is only available on the PlayStation 3 because it's not compatible on future PlayStations and no one has, made a remaster yet. So it's going to sit there and remain unplayable unless you own a working PlayStation 3.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. There are a lot of games like that. It's honestly, there's a lot of games like that. There are a lot of games that exist that's just how it is. That's just how it works. And like, there's a lot of PlayStation 2 games, like some of the really weird ones that nobody ever plays. It's honestly it's bullshit. I think that, you know, like you said, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to money. They don't want people to be doing this shit for free.
Of course, because heaven forbid some guy out there download a ROM for a game he doesn't own. Because, yeah, the company's not going to make any money off of a game that they no longer produce.
Exactly.
But how about you go fuck yourself instead? How about that? You don't deserve to play the game if you're not willing to shell out, $200 for a version of it online, one of the last remaining ones.
Well, I was gonna say there was a game that I was looking for the other day, and I have a copy of it, and it's called Body Harvest. You remember that old?
Ah, that's a classic.
It's an alien game for the N64. It's one of the few titles that got an M rating, because Nintendo's always been super weird about that shit. But
Yeah, they were super antsy about ever allowing anything that could be remotely viewed as inappropriate to kids.
right, and then I think the first M rated games were on the N64 because you had things like Resident Evil 2, you had things like Doom and other things like that were rated M, or maybe Doom was on a previous one, or maybe it was censored. I don't really remember, but regardless, I mean, they're super weird about it. But Body Harvest, it's like a super random game. I looked it up and like nobody like some of the like the newest articles I can find about Body Harvest are from like 2017, 2016. So it's been years since anybody's really covered it. But Body Harvest, it's only for the N64. It was never made for any other console. So the only way that you can find that game is to either find one of the few that people may still have or that are in stores or whatever the case may be, or basically go fuck yourself. Long story short.
And that's the thing. if I wanted to make an argument from an appeal to emotions, I would say that's a game I grew up with. But to this day, I've never beaten it. I've never seen the
Exactly.
ending to it. And I remember having such great memories as a kid playing that dumbass game. Because me being the dumb kid I was back then, I was always convinced that the main character was Samus. Because it looked like Samus.
It
Except for a
did.
little more pink.
Or was it orange?
Listen, man. I might
Or
be
salsa
colorblind.
colorblind?
It's a very real possibility. Question. How
Answer.
good, like right now, if I say some shit, can you bleep it out? Or will
I
you just
mean,
have to cut the whole thing?
what are you about to say that I would need to bleep out?
Well, I can't say it unless I know you can bleep it out.
I can remove it if you need me to.
You know what? Remove it, bleep it, whatever. The fans don't need to hear this. For starters, everyone should go out and just fucking start pirating emulated copies of games. I don't give a fuck. Two,
At this
right
point,
now,
I'm not gonna bleep that out. I'll just leave it in. Fuck it. What are they gonna do? Demonetize us? We don't make any money as it is.
yeah, we're just two dudes sitting at our computers dicking around. This part you might have to demonetize or take out just so it doesn't sound like we're committing crimes. I am currently looking for a Body Harvest emulator or a ROM. Not sure which website to use now since so many of them have been, removed.
See, I don't think it's illegal. I think that there's some weird like legal loop where it's like you're not purchasing a pirated copy. You're being given a pirated copy, so it's not technically illegal because I think it's illegal to purchase a pirated copy.
Well,
If I know the
I can tell you based on what I have read, like regarding laws and legislation, downloading an emulate or a ROM is not illegal. Because they're not profiting off of it. Downloading the emulator itself, it's open source software, not illegal. What
right.
is illegal is downloading the BIOS that allows the emulator to act as an actual console. Because legally speaking, unless you purchase that BIOS, it is not yours and it is piracy. So,
Interesting.
so technically, all you would have to do to make your emulator 100% legal, this is entirely what I've read. I can't tell you if it's real, but all you have to do to make your emulator legal is to download the BIOS directly off of your console, assuming it still works. And once you do that, you can just plug it in and boom, you have an emulator that works and is fully legal.
Fair. Okay, that's fair. But for purposes of clarification, there are means in which to find other forms of your of what you're trying to play. I honestly I think it's kind of unrealistic for that to be the case. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of unrealistic to expect people to already own these games when some of them are so few and far between. Like for instance, like if I have a also not to mention if I have an SNES game or a Game Boy game, how the fuck am I going to get the BIOS for that?
Fair enough. Like I said, man, we don't make any money from this, so we can say whatever the fuck we want. And really,
Right.
come on, just emulate your fucking games because how else are you going to keep alive a game that is built on a dying hardware?
Yeah. More than dying. Dead almost.
Yeah, so really, there is no reason why it still exists.
I think that if they have stopped making games for that console and it has been more than 10 years, there should be no reason why you can't emulate.
Yeah, at that point, it basically is just No, I'm not gonna say it's your duty, but fucking A, man.
I mean,
Something's gotta be done.
I mean, like for instance, like if we were just we have to close out the podcast here, but we'll do a quick examination here. So, when was the last PS2 game made?
Man, this is weird. I am looking around right now, seeing if I can find Nintendo 64 ROMs. Can't find them.
I'll send you a link later.
Like, I'm so suspicious of most of these websites, to be honest. That's probably why I'm like this one,
So,
emulatorgames.com. Ooh, that sounds like a CIA honeypot.
so for instance, 2014 was the last time that a PlayStation 2 game was made. So
2014?
Yeah, 2014. Last game
It
was
must have been a foreign game, right?
I'm pretty sure it was. The last game for PlayStation 1 was made in 2005. Bro, what the fuck?
Even that sounds wrong.
It's not. It's correct. So the last PlayStation 1 game was FIFA 4 in 2005. And the last PlayStation 2 game was 2014. It was PES 2014, which ironically is Pro Evolution Soccer. So the last games to be made on the PlayStation 1 and 2 were fucking soccer games. What the hell?
That doesn't surprise me. If there's one thing that's going to outlast us, it's going to be fucking FIFA and dumb shit like that.
And the last Nintendo 64 game was made in 2002. The last GameCube game was...
Fuck.
I think it was 2008 or 9. So I mean, most of the consoles that we grew up with apparently the exception of the PlayStation 2, I mean, they've not made games for it in over a decade. You know, basically, PlayStation 1 and GameCube and sooner, like last GameCube game was like, I think 2009 is what they said. Was Madden 2008, so that probably came out in 2008 or 2007. I don't know how the dating shit works for that. But point being is that the last time games were made were over a decade ago. You stopped making games. You stopped making the consoles over a decade ago. Like I can't go out and buy a GameCube. They cost like $60, which granted is a small price to pay for the console, but most of the time these older consoles, they're so few and far between. And of course,
think of it like this. You pay $60 for that console. You're buying it used, so it's going to wear down faster and it's going to stop working one day. Correct. Plus, you have to take into account every game you want to buy is going to range anywhere from $5 on Facebook Marketplace to about $200 if it's a collector's item.
Exactly.
So you're not going to be able to play all the games you used to play unless you have serious money to cash out, or your childhood was fucking lame and you played some bullshit games that aren't considered, collector's items.
Right. All right, folks, we have to end this here. So next episode, we will probably continue this conversation about emulation and emulators. And it's a little bit, we'll probably talk about some other stuff, but for now, guys, we got to close out because we're at our 30-minute mark, probably a little bit longer. So hope you guys enjoyed. If you did enjoy it, give us a comment, a like, and a subscribe. Go to our Facebook and our Twitter, hit us up, and go send death threats to me and Salsa on Twitter. You can find all that information in the description down below and at the end of the video. And as always, if you are wanting to join the Geek-Stew crew, if you want to join me and Salsa in our wonderful adventures, let us know. We're always looking to expand our product. But stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy, and Salsa, close us out.
I don't have many words of wisdom, but if I were to pass along one piece of advice, it would be fuck the police. What are they going to do? Kill you? It's a win-win. You break the law and get what you want, or you die and also get what you want. That's it. See you next time.